Have you ever read a quote and it felt like it was speaking directly to you? Like you saw it at the right time, you save it and probably share it to your friends, your family, or even said to yourself, wow, I needed this. And then a few days later, the old thought pattern shows up again. Fear, doubt, the same way of seeing yourself, the same way of interpreting what is happening to you or what had happened. And now you are wondering, why did that quote feel so good in the moment, but it didn't really stay? And that's what I want to talk about today. Hey, I'm Zephyr, a licensed therapist, and this is W Ap Koute M. You are listening to me, I am listening to you. Today, I want to talk about inspirational quotes because I think many of us have had moments where a quote, a phrase, a sentence, or even a simple reminder touch something in us, right? Sometimes you're scrolling on social media or you're reading something, or maybe someone sends you something, and it feels like, okay, I needed to hear that today. It gives you the hope, the language, a moment to breathe. Maybe it even help you see something differently for a moment. But what happens after that moment, though? What happens when the quote feels good, but the pattern still shows up? A lot of how we interpret the world, relationships, how we interpret what happens to us, and the relationship that we have with ourselves come through patterns and beliefs. Some of those beliefs are useful, they help us and guide us, but some of them, right, are harmful. They keep us in cycles that repeat over and over because they came from childhood experiences, painful experiences, negative experiences, right, or traumatic experiences, sometimes from toxic relationships, rejection, abandonment, or moment where we had to figure out how to survive emotionally. And sometimes we are not even curious of them. We don't even know, or we are not aware that they are there. But thought patterns like, this is how I am, this is how people are, this is how life works, or something like, this is what always happens to me. But underneath that, there may be a belief that has been there for a long time. I like to think of this like a computer. Imagine your brain like a desktop, okay? On that desktop, you have folders. And they have names, right? One folder may be called career. One is relationship. Another folder is called family. And then you have one called a view of self. You have view of the world. Another folder might be called trust. And then there's a folder called love, and then another one called safety. And inside each folder, there are beliefs, stories, experiences, things that you learned, things that happened to you, things that people said to you, things that you saw growing up, and things you had to accept even if they hurt you. And every time something new happens, your brain tries to figure out where to put it. Where does this fit? Meaning, which folder I'm going to put this in, right? Does this match what I already believe or what I already have in my folders? Does this confirm what I already know? Does this feel familiar even? And if the information you are getting, it's something that matches the folder, it is easier for the brain to file it in there, right? It will file it in there in trust, in love, or in the folder that says something about relationship, right? So it goes on, right? If there is a belief that says people always leave, and then somebody takes longer to text back, the brain may put it in that folder. It's kind of like solidified, right? Or it's kind of like you see it as a fact. See, people do leave, right? People disappeared, or people cannot be trusted. If there is a belief that says nothing good ever happened to me, and then something disappointing happens, the brain is going to file it there. See, this is what always happens. I knew it. This is my life. And then also, if there is a belief that says I have to be strong all the time, and then someone needs you, the brain, it's going to file it there too. And you might tell yourself things like, see, I cannot rest, I cannot stop, people are always counting on me. And the thing is, when something does not match the belief, the brain may not know where to put it. You might question it, you might minimize it, you will eventually reject it. You might tell yourself, this is nice, that sounds nice, but it's not for me. And this is very common, and it happens because that's the way the brain processes information. And it happens in many areas, right? For example, faith, politics, relationship, conversation about families and friendship. It happens when people are trying to learn something new, but there is already a belief underneath that says this cannot be true, or this does not fit in any folders that you already have. And when we do not know what our folders are holding, it becomes very difficult to receive something different, because the brain is always trying to make sense of things based on what it already knows. So now let's bring in the inspirational quote into that, right? How does that factor in? You read something, for example, that says, I am worthy, or something that says, good things are coming, right? Or something that says, I deserve peace, I am allowed to rest, I do not have to prove myself. And in the moment, it feels so good. Your body may soften a little, and then the hope comes in, right? You feel seen. You may feel like, okay, yes, this is what I needed to hear. But then as the days go by, if there is no folder for it, if there is no belief inside of you that can hold it, it will start to fade away. because then life continues. The same situation may still be happening. The same relationship might still be difficult. The same stress may still be there. The responsibilities are still waiting for you. And now the old belief comes back. The old folder opens again. The old pattern says, come back over here. This is what we know. So even if the quote felt good, the belief underneath may still be saying something totally different, right? A quote may say good things are coming, but the belief underneath may say nothing good ever happens to me. You might see another quote that says you're worthy, but then you have a belief that says I have to earn love. If you see a quote that says rest is necessary, but then the underneath belief says if I rest, I'm lazy. If you also see a quote that says you do not have to carry everything, but then your belief says if I do not do it, nobody will, the old pattern will continue to show up because that's what the folder is holding. And this is where awareness becomes very important, because sometimes we are trying to put something positive on top of something we have not yet named or we have not yet become aware of. We are trying to repeat something new, but we have not yet understood what old belief is still leading us. And when the old belief has been there for years, when it has built through experience, when it helped you survive at one point, it's going to have more weight than the new one. It's gonna become the default, basically. So it because of the history, right? You're gonna see it as evidence. And then there's also memories attached to it that makes it even stronger. And this is why I always think healing is not just about telling yourself something positive. There's always a place for positive thinking, yes. There is also a place for reframing. There is also a place for affirmation and inspirational quote. But the beginning of it all, it's awareness. Awareness matters. Readiness matters. The deep work matters. Because some of the beliefs we carry, we're not random. They were protective at one point. Maybe you learn to expect this disappointment because disappointment kept happening. Or you learn not to need too much because your needs were not met. Or you learn to be strong because softness was not safe. Or you learn to stay quiet because speaking up created conflict. Or you learn to be useful because being useful was how you felt valued. Or you learn to prepare for the worst because the worst happened before or always happen. And the brain is there to help us survive, right? That's part of its job. So some of the patterns that no longer serve you now may have helped you at another time, right? They may have helped you get through childhood, for example, or through a toxic relationship, or get to a tough season where you did not have support. They might have helped you keep going when stopping did not feel like an option. And this is why we have to bring compassion to the conversation, right? Because the question is not why can I not just believe something positive? But the question is, where did this belief come from? What did this belief help me survive? What does this belief keep trying to protect me from? What part of me still thinks I need this belief in order to be safe? And if this belief is still true for my life right now, for where I'm at right now, right? And that is the work. That is awareness. That is the wilderness that needs to happen. That is the part we often skip when we only focus on the quote, because the quote may bring something to the surface. It may touch something. Yeah. It may show you what you want to believe, where you want to be, or the type of thinking pattern you want to have. It may show you what you're longing for, or what your body wants to receive. But then the deeper question becomes, what is inside of me, right? Inside those folders has a hard time holding on to this. What belief inside of me makes this hard to believe? What pattern shows up after the quote fades? And this is also how I think about using inspirational quote in the therapy room. I am very, very, very cautious about that, because when someone comes in to therapy carrying deep beliefs about themselves, the world, relationships, their worth, their safety, their voice, their needs, I'm not just gonna start by just throwing positive quote or inspirational quote left and right just to change these beliefs. We have to start to notice what is there. What is the thought? What is the belief? And where did it come from? When did you first learn this? How does it show up in your relationship? How does it show up in your body? How does it show up in the way you make decisions? How does it show up in the way you rest or you don't rest? Or how does it show up in the way you receive support? And then we have to see it, sit with it. It's not rushing to replace it right away, because sometimes people have been carrying something for so long and they have never had space to understand it, right? We have to name it, we have to explore it, we look at the pattern, the belief, and sometimes we're not even ready, or the person is not ready to let it go, because that's what keeps them safe, or even give them the belief that they are safe. We have to look at the evidence the brain has been holding on to, right? We looked at how in the past it did help. And then slowly we begin to ask, is this still serving me? Or is this still serving you? Is this still where you are in life? Is this still how you want to see yourself? Is this still how you want to move through the world? And then reframing can begin. But the reframe has to be something that you can actually hold. Sometimes going from I am not enough to I am amazing and everything is perfect is very extreme. It's too far. Sometimes the nervous system may not receive that yet. So the reframe have to start small, right? It may sound like I am learning to see myself differently, or there may be more to me than what I thought. Or I can notice this thought without letting it lead every decision. Or something like, this belief helped me before, but I am allowed to question it now. Or I do not have to keep proving my worth in the same way. And then, like that, little by little, new pathways are gonna form, new folders are gonna be created. And then, the more you practice them, the more you give your brain a place to put something different. Then later, when a quote comes in, it may have somewhere to land, right? Now, when you read I am worthy, there is a part of you that has already started doing the work of questioning the belief that you said you were not. Now, when you read I am allowed to rest, there is a part of you that has already started noticing the guilt and where it came from. Now, when you read good things can happen to me, there is a part of you that has already started challenging the folder that says nothing good ever happened to me. And then you start seeing the difference. Because now the quote is not just standing in the void, right? It's being supported by awareness, practicing, healing. It's been supported by a new way of relating to yourself. And that is where inspirational quote can become more than just a moment, right? They can become a reminder, an anchor at that point. It can become language for the work you're already doing, and they can become a support to the work that you are doing. So if you are someone who reads quote, save quote, reposts quote, or write down affirmation, use positive reminder, I want you to be curious. The next time a quote touches you, maybe ask yourself, what part of me needed this today? What part of me wants to believe this? What part of me already believed this, even a little? And what part of me has a hard time receiving this? And that will be awareness. If a quote says you deserve peace, and something inside of you say, do I? Be curious about that. If a quote says you're allowed to rest, and something inside of you says, but there is too much to do, just be curious about it. If a quote says you are enough, and something inside you says, only if you keep doing this, again, be curious about that. Because the resistance is not something to feel guilty about or shame. The resistance is saying it's also showing you a folder. It's showing you a belief that is already there. It's showing you where the deeper work needs to be done. The goal is not to force yourself to believe the quote right away. The goal is to notice what comes up when you read it, what would need to shift inside of you for this to feel true, what belief would, you have to ask or you have to question, what pattern would you have to notice? What experience are you still carrying? And what would help you create a new folder for the quote? And remember, it takes time, it takes practice, it takes compassion, awareness, and sometimes it takes support. Because we are not just changing words, the deeper work is changing pathways. We are changing the way the brain has learned to file information. We are changing the way the body responds to what is unfamiliar. Changing the way we see ourselves. And it does not happen from just one sentence. But the sentence can be the opening door, the beginning. The sentence can help you notice what you want to believe, and it can help you see where healing is needed. So when the quote feels good, but the pattern still shows up, maybe that is not a failure. It is an invitation and to slow down, to notice the belief that is underneath, right? To understand how it protects you, and to decide whether it still belongs in this season of my life, of your life. So that way you can begin creating a new place inside of you where something different can land. Sometimes we just need to understand why the truth we read had nowhere to stay. And once we begin doing that work, those reminders can feel different. They're no longer just words on a screen. They become something we are slowly learning how to live. I want to leave you with this reflection. Think about a quote, an affirmation, or a reminder that has touched you recently. Maybe it's something you've saved, or something you liked, something that made you pause and ask yourself, what did this quote touch in me? What belief inside of me makes this hard to fully receive? And what is one small way I can begin creating space for this truth in my life? Because healing is not only about what we repeat, it's also about what we are ready to receive. And sometimes before we can receive something new, we have to understand what we have been carrying. If you're looking for a gentle space to continue reflecting, I invite you to join my free Lakai Within community. It is a space for women to slow down, to reflect, reconnect with themselves, and remember that they do not have to carry everything alone. The link is in the show note. Thank you for tuning in to Ap Koute M. If this episode resonated, subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need it. And remember, keep prioritizing yourself, keep learning, and let's heal, grow, and thrive together.